I am unashamed. What about you?
You know what's crazy is now civilization is getting back to normal somewhat. I mean, still the virus is going and pandemic, but the stores are open. Because what happened was right before the coronavirus hit, Jay, we went fishing and it was really hot. I mean, it was really hot. And it's like all the bugs that we had hit on the way down there before daylight, you really couldn't see out of the windshield. So he put some water on the windshield. It's a true story, no embellishment. He just sprayed the water on it to get the bugs off, and the windshield went poof, and a crack just went all the way down the middle. I mean, almost like falling out.
When he sprayed water on it?
Sprayed water on it. And it was really hot. It's the only thing we could think of,
And it had all the bugs on it?
Oh, it had massive.
Maybe it had something to do with that.
As soon as the windshield wiper and the water, when that hit, it just went boom. And he went, sorry. I was like, you broke my windshield. Because he was driving for some reason because I was sleepy, I think. But, and so, well, then I'm going to go fix it. Well, everything closes. So I can't. So I've been driving around with an Inspired Inspection sticker for weeks that turned into months. And so today I go.
Lucky for you, they probably weren't pulling a lot of people over because of the virus too. So
I'm sure they saw me, because they're all looking. I mean, this thing was expired, and they want. It's a good way to make some money. And because I know from past experience, the longer it's expired,
the more money,
the more you pay.
That's right.
So they wait. They're waiting.
You gotta get that.
I got it.
There's a waiting game there. You wait too long, you get a new windshield.
I was gonna say coronavirus. Nobody's open, but now everybody's open, so I don't have an excuse. So look, I go down there and get the windshield replaced. Well, I went to, I appreciate it. So no, I got to explain this to you. She gets out a sheet of paper. I just found this interesting, and there were like 10 things. And look, the more she talked, it's like this windshield was a living organism. It's like, now look, for the first 2 hours, we need that to sit. And so we can't slam a door until 4 hours. And then you can remove the tape after 6 hours. I was looking around, I was getting uncomfortable. I was like, these people have fallen in love with the windshield. I think they were trying to justify.
That explanation is a long way from redneck ingenuity.
Yeah, I thought.
The redneck ingenuity, they put the windshield in there. Nobody says anything.
No. So now I have 2 big things of orange tape on, and I was actually, she gave such a speech that I was driving more slow than normal.
Afraid you break your windshield.
I thought, you didn't want to hit a pothole.
Well, on your way here, it's pothole central.
Oh my goodness!
And I mean, just
well, they've just given up on your road. By the way, it was just like whatever.
You were the first roads to go, Phil,
Yeah.
in the pandemic. I mean, you come down here and you're not paying attention.
I mean, I'm longing for the old dirt roads from when I grew up. At least they wasn't full of potholes. They put a little dirt in them.
It was better with dirt.
Yeah, I mean, this is dry. Lose your drive.
If you don't pay attention, it's serious.
So anyway, I mean, I'm like, okay, I guess they're trying to justify the price, but I haven't. A new windshield makes you feel a little better.
But it's funny.
life.
Years ago, now, I mean, a new windshield was a big deal. But these days now, you hit a rock come off of, like a back of a dump truck or something,
yeah.
and it'll just hit it, right off the bat. But you call up your insurance company now, they just come over and they'll put a little deal on that one thing, or even sometimes they'll just say, we'll take the whole thing out. It costs you $50 or whatever.
Oh, Al, look, when she said, now what insurance do you have? I said, no, I'm just going to pay for it. I was like, she's like, excuse me? I said, well, I told her the story. We're sitting in the parking lot, the thing just broke. It wasn't nothing. I mean, it happened.
Right.
How much did it cost me? I'm going to pay you for it. And it was literally like I said something. I'm going to give you money for what you did. And it was like I said something that cannot be done.
It was a foreign concept.
Yeah, she looked over, I guess, at her boss. And they're looking, And I said, I got cash.
He's going to pay for it.
Yeah. I said, I got.
Out of his pocket.
I said, I got cash money. And she said, do you have exact change? I thought, they don't transact money here anymore. I said, well, I can get pretty close.
Because you keep a little cash in the
I
truck.
got some money, And I'm like,
No, it does show you the difference in insurance. So I get my knee, I got to get my knee looked at. I tore my meniscus. So they send me over.
When did you tear this meniscus?
This is about a year ago. So
Yep.
I've been doing a physical therapy. So far, so good. But I go in, I got to get the thing looked at, right? So you got to get an MRI. So they send me over to the MRI people. So I'm like, I got to get an MRI. So how do I do that? So she said, well, schedule, and she said, so how are you going to pay for it? You're using insurance. And I said, well, I don't. I said, what does it cost? And same deal. She said, she looked and looking. She said, well, it depends. Are you using insurance or paying cash price? And I
now,
said,
why would that depend?
well, exactly. I was like, well, isn't it
I think I know the reason. The guy said, we need to operate on your eye immediately or you're going to lose your sight. I said, well, go for it. He said, how are we going to pay for that?
You went from losing sight.
Your insurance, he said, insurance pay for it. He said, okay, let's say it's $3,500. So I said, Miss Kay, you got $3,500? She said, yeah. She said, I'll pay for it. So they call around. The insurance company calls back, says, you can't do it. You can't do that. No. You're in a clinic. You're with an eye professional in a clinic. Yeah, you have to be in a hospital or we don't pay you. But he's just told me that unless he fixes it right now, I'll be blind by tomorrow. So I'm like, well, we can't delay it. So they look, Miss Kay's with the insurance company, and they're all hassling about my eye. And I'm thinking, well, have y'all forgotten that I'm fixing to go blind out of one eye? Forget the insurance company. I said, what if we just pay you? He said, $2,800.
Now it's $2,800.
It was $35 5 minutes ago.
Because the insurance
gotta
is paying for it.
But she gonna pay for it? I said, you got $2,800 on you, Miss Case? He said, yeah, I sure do. I said, well, get the man a check, and he fixed my eye. And they were sitting there, hey. I said, well, what's all this? I said, by the way, Doc, I know this sounds like a crazy question. Why was it $3,500 5 minutes ago if the insurance company was going to pay it, and now it's not but $2,800? What dropped that price? He said, it's just the way business is done.
That's a
son.
scam.
Because you fleeced the insurance.
Right. Well, that's
and,
so
and
here's
they're fleecing you.
that's right. Well, here's
And look, that eye was not fixed until that $2,800 was given to the doctor, and that was checked to see if they had it.
Yeah.
But then once they come, everybody was happy. Hey, what
When
you
the
say?
money hit the hand went to the eye.
So my deal was, so they told me, they said,
That's why I tried to stay away from town. Period.
yeah, exactly.
I'm just trying to
You've
stay
been to
out
a
of town.
Yeah, we are. So,
Stay out of town. Don't get in
They
there.
told me $1,500 if you pay for it, if you just want to pay for it. I said, okay. I said, so what's the insurance price? $3,000. Double. The insurance was
Yeah.
double. Same procedure. So I said, well, let me talk to my wife. I don't know. This is all confusing to me. Go ahead and make the appointment. So I go home. We check with the insurance company. Well, guess what my deductible is to the insurance company?
$1,500.
$1,500.
Well, yeah.
So
Well, now it all makes
I could
sense.
pay $1,500 and get it done. Put it on the insurance. They're going to charge them $3,000. They're going to get my $1,500. They are, and then they're going to pay. So I wound up just paying for it. I thought,
I did the same thing.
I was just
I mean,
like, if it's
I
going to
gave-
cost the same.
I gave him $300, whatever it was.
But
Said,
I thought
"Thank you."
that's what's wrong with the whole system.
Ah.
I mean, you talk about a mess when you got all
Well, if
that
you look
going
at it logically, people who are not as blessed as others,
on. Yep.
these bills, they don't even have the $1,500 for the
Sure.
for
Yeah,
the
it'd be a
knee
big deal,
or
right?
the $2,800 for the eye. They don't have the money.
Right.
Well, you just think about it. You wonder why everybody, make the government do it. It's just, if you go to town, you run into that. Arguing about prices, you're liable to get shot. You're more likely to be shot. You're more likely to be robbed.
Well,
I said you're more likely to catch some kind of virus that comes through. I said stay out of town. That's all I can tell
So
you. Just stay out of town. Stay away from towns.
Your paranoid personality has really blossomed during this.
The man, they're tearing the
Quarantine.
statues down. They tore down the statue of Thomas Jefferson, and I thought, well, they weren't a good man because Jefferson is the one that said, I think as long as there's open lands to go to,
We'll be all right.
Americans will be happy. But if you ever get stacked on top of one another like they were in Europe, where they just come from, Europe. He said, we'll become as corrupt as they are.
Yep.
Well, Jefferson was right.
So-
there's more corruption in the cities. There's more death. There's more violence. It's
there's
a
more people.
very troublesome place. A city is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just is.
And you'll be happy to know, and Thomas Jefferson, if he were here, would be happy to know that because of everything that's been going on, I read recently there's a pretty good mass exodus going on as we speak
That is correct.
out of these big cities
That is
because
correct.
they're talking about no police and all that. So people are saying, you know what?
They're wising up.
It does. Let's go down and find us some land somewhere. And
Your taxes are astronomical. I mean, it's just a bad place to be. Cities. I don't think we were meant, human beings, to be stacked that tightly together.
Right.
It's just too much.
well, it changed. What happened was we were a farm culture, agriculture for
Yep.
all the early years. But then all of a sudden, people are like, "Well, let's go to town because they're starting to they're starting to make stuff," and that's what led to all of it. But
I
then it just hadn't worked out.
reminded the film crew this morning for the Blaze TV thing.
In the woods.
I gave
with
them 3 in a row, and I was just sitting there and have a few notes I'd taken it at night, and I was sitting there doing it. And I said, y'all stop just a minute. I said, listen, just stop and listen a minute. They, of course, the film crew looked at me, and they were looking around.
What are we supposed to be hearing?
I said, guess what we're hearing right now? I said, not one sound. I said, it's completely quiet. I said, we're under these big oak trees in my yard. I said, there's not a sound anywhere.
Right.
I said, how in the world would human beings not recognize that as a good place to be? It's just, of course, maybe it's just me, but
I don't know.
it was completely silent. We get over in them woods we own over at Jace. We get out in the middle of that thing. You just wouldn't believe what you're not hearing.
Yeah.
It's just calmness for the mind, peace of mind. I'm on record as saying peace of mind is the rarest commodity there is,
Right.
because people just can't be quiet and be in a place where I look at in the streets and I'm hearing them holler and scream and running, and I'm thinking, I said, I look, and every time I look, you say, where is it?
Yeah.
On a city street. That's where it is.
I envision.
It's one of the
Phil
saddest things I've ever watched in
an
my
urban
life.
city on a street corner with a sign that says "Shut up."
Be quiet.
I would love to go onto any city street and have a sign that says, I'm here and I hope y'all will shut up. Because I would just like to hear it calm down where people smile and walk on by. But for the stuff that's coming out of there, they won't stop. They get within 6 inches of a man's face, 2 inches, and the protesters are screaming at these guys who, it's a tough road, the police.
It's terrible.
And they're right in their faces calling them all these names, and all this stuff is just coming out of them. And I look
Corona
at it,
spittle.
and I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, boy, that's city life. That's the place to be. I am anti-city, period. Sorry.
I think we've got that established. So every time we go to New York, which we have to do from time to time, that is the one thing.
Oh,
You're
it's just right now chills are going down my spine. Oh, my
Well,
goodness.
good news for you, Dad. I would
The
imagine.
last time I was in New York City, they had a police department. By the time we get there, there'll be $1 billion less for the cops. And I'm thinking, boy, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, we don't want to go.
That's something to look forward to.
Well, the good news is, more than likely, because of the COVID ongoing, we're probably going to be able to promote your book from right here in the friendly confines
Let's
of
don't
West
go to
Monroe.
New York. I don't
Yeah.
want to go to New York ever again. I've been to New York. I don't want to
Ever.
go back.
It's like a town. Let's take a break. So one of my favorite sponsors is Tommy John, because they make the best, most breathable underwear in the world. And I've tried a lot of different ones.
I always thought you're somewhat of a sissy if you're talking about your underwear. A man now. A man discussing underwear. I'm like, no.
Well, Phil, they're selling. How you gonna sell it? You got to do.
That's
some
what I'm
marketing.
saying. I'm all in on Mr. John, whoever he is. I'm all in on it.
Tommy John.
I mean, actually,
I tell you
it
what,
does not take away your manhood, but to me, it's a little bit soft.
I will raise my hand. I am a sissy when it comes to underwear because
Never had a discussion about underwear.
Me
we
either.
never have.
Ever.
It's the first one we've ever had is on this podcast, and that's the problem. Y'all don't know about the best underwear in the world.
That's right.
Like, if you're in a duck blind,
That's why
you
we
say-
got these old raggedy stuff we wear. I don't know what they call them. I've never looked at the
They
brand.
call them
I don't-
tidy whiteys.
No,
That's what they
call
call
them cheap,
cheap. Yeah.
disposable.
So let
Well,
me
these may be worth
let
a
me tell
try,
our
but-
audience about it because I guarantee you want to try this, and I'm going to get y'all some to try as well. So basically, they call it cool cotton. It's so great in the summer because that's when it's just brutal.
Cotton is the best material.
And this is
I
like
have
a
a cotton
really
T-shirt
soft
on
cotton.
because in the hot summertime in Louisiana, this keeps you cooler than any of it.
Yeah.
White
Well,
T-shirt, cotton.
It's good. Cotton is the best.
Like,
And
it used to be white. Now it's
yeah,
It's got a few stains.
many
here,
colors.
You know.
So they have here's how much they like their underwear, Dad. So they have a full refund. It's called the best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. So if you wear a pair of these, and if you don't say this is the best pair of underwear I've ever had, you can
Well,
send it back.
I may succumb if you offer me a dare.
We're doing the dare. So here's what you do. Go to TommyJohn.com/Phil to get 20% off your first order. TommyJohn.com/Phil. 20% off best underwear you'll ever try, or you can send them back. All right, so Dad's anti-town. We got that. That's not really new news. That's old news.
It's old news.
So in our study in John, we've gotten to a really interesting story that I don't know. I've preached at least a couple of sermons on this text and a few classes. I'm sure you have too, Jace. This is from John 8, and
And we'll note right off the bat, there's in the theological world, since the earliest manuscripts, they say, didn't have, I think, John 7:53 through 8:11, which is what people who this story makes a lot of religious people uncomfortable.
right.
And so they'll go to that. And I just want to say that because that's where people who are uncomfortable with this story, that's what they use. They're like, well, the earliest manuscripts didn't have this story, but numerous ones did.
Right.
And I think this falls right in line with what God represents through Jesus 100%.
And the timing of it was right on target because remember the last 3 chapters we've been in, there's been this whole thing about trying to kind of trap Jesus and try to make him say something that then he's not really the Son of God. So you kind of got that going back and forth. In fact, leading up to it in the context, the Jewish leaders sent in some temple guards to get him. They were like, all right, we've had enough. You go get him and bring him back here. They were going to go ahead and start the process that would happen a little bit later.
Claiming to be God.
Right,
and,
all this stuff.
doing miracles, blasphemy.
So they show up, and the temple guards did, and they start listening to him, and they come back to the Jewish leaders, and they don't have him. And so they were like, why didn't you bring him in? This is verse 46 of John 7. They said, no one ever spoke the way this man does. And I love that. It was like they were like, we couldn't arrest this guy. I mean,
Have y'all heard what he had to say?
exactly.
I always think of that line. You ever seen anybody like this? I never heard of anything like this. That's a tombstone line.
So the next verse, in verse 47, before I read it, I'm going to tell you a story about what I did, Jay. So on our book, Desperate Forgiveness, which is right here. So when how you sign your book, well, I always try to find a verse that fits the theme of my book, and I write it under my deal when I sign my book. And so I came up with Luke 7:47, and it was the one where Jesus told there was a woman at his feet, and he tells her, he tells Simon, actually, he says, to the person who has been forgiven much, they love much. But to the person who has been forgiven little, they love little. And he was making the comparison between the woman and Simon. That's
As a general.
right. So that's
issue.
that's Luke 7. So, but the first 2 events I did, somehow in my mind, I got, juxtaposed here. and I was writing John 7:47, which
What
is this
John
verse.
47? You mean he has deceived you also?
The Pharisees retorted. So the
Notice
first
the word retort.
retorted.
It wasn't like, it's like,
They weren't happy.
No.
It was a sneer. But what was funny is so the first 200 people that got my book.
Yeah, which kind of goes along with you're deceived.
Well, I guess so, but I thought, what are they going to think when they read that verse? And they're going to think, what is it? I mean, you talk about. There's some people that spend some hours thinking
I
about.
would think that Al might have wrote this book, but he's an idiot. That's what I would have thought.
Well, I discovered it thankfully and changed it. But anyway, so they're like, "Oh, he's deceived you also." Has any of the rulers of the Pharisees believed in him? No, and they say that proudly. But that tells you something about the ruling class, about where they are. Of course, it's not true anyway, because we're fixing to find out. But this mob that knows nothing of the law, there's a curse on them.
boy, that sounds like modern day America.
It does.
Well, there are going to be some similarities here, except these were religious people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, troubling.
So they said no one's believed him. But look at the next verse, 50. Nicodemus, we've
Love
heard
it.
him, who had gone to Jesus earlier, remember John 3, and who was one of their own number. It's almost like John has said, you said
We
there
got a
was-"
defector.
He says, does our law condemn anyone without first hearing him to find out what he is doing?
Well, what do you know? He's advertising for freedom of speech.
That's exactly right. And for testimony.
And I think it's worth a reminder. He went to Jesus at night because he was one of their number. I do think there was
slipping through the
he was
shadows.
afraid.
there was something there.
Right.
And then he is blown away with what Jesus had to say. I mean, you got to be born again. I mean, that is
Like get inside my mother.
Yeah, that's a
'cause that was his
mic drop conversation. In your
Yeah.
religious theology classes, you ever had
Yeah.
somebody say, how about being
Nicodemus'
born again?
head is spinning, and he's
Yeah.
thinking, let's see, I got to go back inside my mother. This dude, I don't know about
So
him.
when we fast forward to the end of the book of John, we know that Nicodemus did become a believer because there he is taking Jesus' body down
Yep.
with Joseph and
Yep.
preparing it. So it's really
I think that's a transformation. And when you look for transformation, because really that's I think the strongest evidence of God. And I mean, I'm living on a creation that's demanding a creator. But that true transformation, you see it, and it's like it's not really mentioned from his perspective because there's just three little glimpses. But look where the three glimpses
right.
are.
Yeah.
It was at the beginning,
he's sneaking around
in the
asking-
middle, and then at the end when Jesus dies, well, he's there taking care of the body.
He's there.
He had a
He
transformation
did.
moment, and I'm pretty positive that when he got wind that, he's back, that pretty well sealed the deal for him.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
he probably thought, now I understand born again. Yeah, I get it now.
He I'm pretty sure he set things right with his friends.
You know, that would be a good sermon. I'm always thinking about a good sermon, Jay. If you showed the three glimpses of Nicodemus to question and then he's basically defending Jesus here. And then he finally, at the end, he's totally submissive. He's the one taking care of his dead body to get it into the ground.
It's a picture for us all.
It
I
is.
did it for a house church.
That's a good
going
yeah.
on Nicodemus.
I
It's
like
good.
that. That's a good one. So, and then verse 52, and this is what happened earlier. They replied, "Are you from Galilee too?" In other words, you idiot. That's what they're basically saying. Are you an idiot too? Look into it. You'll find that a prophet does not come out of Galilee. And the crowd had made the same mistake back in John 6. They didn't know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. They missed that little caveat. So they keep saying, well, he couldn't. I mean, the Messiah's not coming from Galilee and Nazareth. You people are idiots.
Yeah.
But they were wrong the whole time because they didn't know the full truth, which was really interesting to me. So that's the setup that gets us to John 8.
But it's also, it says something, because now you're fixed to go to a person. The reason I think the setup's important here, you're fixed to go to a person who is caught in the act of adultery, which
we
it's
assume
just-
means dragged out of a bed.
just,
Yeah.
is a weird occurrence here. I mean, we got spies, we got some out here, because they're all doing it to test Jesus.
Right.
And so that she gets the focus of the conversation. And, people say, well, the hardest thing to do for the world, for anybody in the world, especially somebody like this, is to repent. But there's also, I can't remember what the joke was because it's really not funny, but they said, but the hardest thing for a church leader, for them to do, is to change.
Yeah.
because it's kind of an irony there, because that's what's set up here. They're not going to listen and change their mind. And we've been around religious leaders like that who are just like, you're like, I mean, will not listen, will not change, and then railing about people who won't change. Thinking, they won't change their behavior, and you won't change your philosophy or theology whatsoever, which is a dangerous place to be.
And never and look at it that way.
We never want to be mistaken, boys, for theologians.
Yeah, or Pharisee.
That's me. I say all the time.
I've never read the word theologian in the Bible. Have you? Where is that verse?
It's not there. And
I wonder why.
the closest you would probably see to it is the word Pharisee. I mean, that's the mindset.
Yep.
Of that.
Well, what you got to remember is you can be wrong on a number of things. That's why I always tell people it makes them uncomfortable. I'm like, the only thing I'm concerned about is you being right with Jesus.
Yeah.
You be right on Jesus, and we're going to let grace abound in every other issue under the sun. We can talk about it. We can discuss it. But you see, and y'all have had these conversations where some issue that somebody comes up with is a deal breaker. Or they'll mask it in things like, well, that's not a salvation issue, or this is a salvation issue. I'm like, Jesus is the salvation issue. Not worried about the rest of it as far as we can talk about it, we can discuss it, but I'm never going to make anything a deal breaker that's not concerning Jesus.
You travel over land and sea for one convert, and once he's converted, you make him twice the son of hell as you are.
Yeah, where's that verse at? That's
I don't know.
That's a scary verse.
Yeah.
That was a good one off the top of your
on
head.
the bottom on right-hand column, way down on the right, I think in Matthew, about mid-Matthew. I could find it if
It
you had
was
to
like
have
the
it.
seven. It was like
There ain't in the Bible, it's in
No, I
there.
know what it was. It was the seven woes.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
was that at?
That's
Al?
in Matthew.
The seven woes.
All right, so let's take a break while we're looking for it. So one of our new sponsors is a group that I really like because they help churches, and I'm a big church guy. And their name is Adjace, ADJACE, not SE like Jace. Basically, they're technology guys, and they've just come up with a way to build church directories that you can interact. The church can interact with each other, as well as, and I did find out our worship planning software is what these guys, they connect with that as well, which is really good. So that helps you to be able to send stuff around to people. It's really good. Connects people. It's easy to set up. You get your directory up and running in less than 2 minutes. And they work with a lot of smaller churches. You know, a lot of big churches kind of figure stuff out, but smaller churches is hard to do. And so that's who they kind of focus on. Portraits, address, phone number, email, all that can be synchronized with the planning center, which is worship
On the net, Phil.
on the net.
So this is one of the positives that came from the coronavirus.
We try to
quarantine.
we try to accentuate the positives on the internet with Dad because he tells us about the other ones.
Y'all are slowly bringing me around, but I got news for you. I'll be gone, and y'all be still trying to pull this thing together.
So it's secure as well, mobile app access, which is great. And like I said, it's inexpensive. Free for churches under 50, which is awesome. So they're really trying to help small churches get connected. $10 a month for churches between 50 and 250, which is the size of most churches. So, and then they'll work with you as you're going forward. So you go to adjace.com, ADJACE.com, hit the new church button, and you'll be up and running in 2 minutes and connected better to your church.
Way down on the right hand on the bottom.
I don't know what that means. You went way down on the right hand on the bottom.
I know where it's written in Matthew.
It's in Matthew 23.
Matthew
All
20,
right, good
bottom
find,
right hand corner.
I don't know about the
I
bottom
don't know if he
right-hand
has the
corner.
same
I'm not
kind of
sure if
version
my
you
Bible is
do.
exactly like yours.
See,
Yeah.
seven woes.
Matthew 23, verse 15.
It's kind of in the middle.
Woe to you.
Oh, it is in the bottom right hand corner of yours.
See, it's in the middle
in the middle.
left hand. On
See, I told you bottom right here. Right, I said way down at the bottom. Go ahead and say that, Jay. See if I had it right. He's worse on them than I was.
No, you quoted it right, but he basically came to the Pharisees in like verse 23. 23, he said, "Woe to you, teachers of the law, the Pharisees, you hypocrite! You give a tenth of your spices, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law. You know, that's kind of the gist of it. But where's the one
15,
you quoted?
verse 15.
All right,
Verse
15 says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much." It's not funny, but I can't help but laugh. The son of hell as you are. Which people say, you want a hellfire and brimstone? This is one of the few Jesus gave. But here was my deal on that, because I think he extends grace to us, and we teach a message of grace. But if you're Jesus, you can do whatever the heck you want to do.
Well, wouldn't you say, though, it's fair to say from all the epistles, that from all the writings, mostly from Paul, that you get the idea that grace abounds for people that have bad behavior, but it also abounds for people who have bad theology, because all of those early churches were not doing things that Paul wanted them to do.
A lot of problems.
And yet he's still calling them brothers. He still extended grace.
Well, that's right.
So it covers bad theology.
It's not like
as well.
2,000 years later, within Christianity, we're not going to have some problems. We are far too splintered,
Yep.
far too divided.
Agreed.
Everybody has their own little theological stance on this, and they're
Agreed.
not going to budge, and we got it and you don't,
Right.
and we got it right. But we live in a realm, Al, I must admit, we live in a realm that it's not that way.
No,
I don't think like that.
Well, in the success of our podcast, and to remind our audience, what we've said from day one here on the podcast, we're not about groups, we're not about signs on the side of your buildings, none of that stuff. We're just going to teach the Bible and study the Bible together. And if you approached it that way and got along with other people and other like-minded believers, you'd be so much better off.
I love
But
every
it
last one of them.
reveals, the Bible reveals Jesus. We read that in John 5, you know. He was like, y'all are studying the scriptures thinking they produce eternal life, but you forgot about me.
Yeah.
And the Bible was written about me,
Right.
which is what they meant. And his whole point here was grace. So I started off saying the reason people say, well, this is not in the early manuscripts and people have difficulty with it is because religious leaders, theologians, somehow think this story excuses sin, which is a big question, that we get all the time. Well, wait a minute here now. If you start forgiving everybody, aren't you saying it's okay to sin? Are you saying adultery is
If you
okay?
start saying the law's been fulfilled, then, right.
Sounds
Is
like
that-
a question given in Romans 6 where
That's
he
right.
says, what shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? Who knew that question that has come up thousands of times in our living rooms and on the phone
Yep.
was asked right there?
That's right.
Of course, Paul in Romans 6 went to when you reenacted the death, burial, and resurrection in baptism, which I think is pretty interesting. He went to Jesus and what saves you, but he went into your participation in it through surrender
Right.
as far as reenacting it. He said, don't you know that all of us who were baptized into Christ, our old self was crucified. We were therefore buried, and just as Christ was raised from the dead, we too may live a new life. We know that our old self is crucified. So you can make a lot of, thoughts there on how that motivates you. Was it because remember what you reenacted? Jesus' death on the cross. He died for this. You don't want to go out there and do it because he paid for it. But you got to remember, even in the specific story, the last thing he says in the story is, go now. He tells the woman who was caught in adultery, and we'll talk about him defending her and
How he did.
asking them, how he goes about doing it. Any of you are without sin, throw the first stone. But then he says, go now and leave your life of sin. There was no support of her behavior
Right.
anywhere in this story.
Right.
No.
He was focused on the forgiveness and the grace that's offered instead of a rule-keeping system, which led to her. Now they got rocks in their hands
Right.
saying, well, let's kill her. What say you?
Plus,
I noticed the dude, there had to have been a dude somewhere.
yeah, you can't have adultery
He's
by
not
yourself.
even in the pic. He's not even in the
What about
equation.
that guy?
Well, where was he? Because I would have think that had two places, two little, both of them stone, both of them. They're stoning the woman and not the man, and you can see
And you're
how
right, that was
you
the
can
law.
see how where the women's liberation movement cranked up because they look at this and say, yeah, I tell you what, yeah, the man they didn't bring him. Well, it's just
Well, it's like me. Look, when I was dating, this really has nothing to do with anything, but this popped into my head. When I was dating, if my girlfriend, because back then I've been unashamed about, I waited till I got married before I had any sexual activity. It was with my wife only on our wedding night. But back in the dating world, it was considered cheating.
What did you say one time, Jace? Your wedding night was the first hour was a study of the human anatomy.
It was pretty much the whole night. It was more like a biological experiment. I was waiting for the birds to start singing, and this was like just do what you got to do and let's reassess. You know, it was not very.
Today in our culture,
Yeah.
Jace, they hear about that story and they're like, I don't know about that.
It was exciting because I was like, let's see what we got here. You know, it
they'll
was
turn-
more like that, as in, now later on, you know, the romance.
The immoral among us, Jace, they would look at you and say, wait a minute here. No, nobody's ever done yeah.
That's what the world's missing. They don't realize that experiment, boy, it's worth the wait because it's like fascinating.
It's discovery.
It's like-
You're to be
Discovery.
commended for that,
I think
Jace.
I said
Absolutely.
that like more than once. I was like, fascinating. I mean, it. And she
So you
really
went on
wasn't.
Mr. Spock on her
She
there.
really wasn't as excited, you know, but she warmed up to me. It took a couple of days. But what I was going to say is in the dating world, I used to, you know, when you're in high school and like, you know, your girlfriend cheats on you. And so what do? Because I didn't have good friends, you know, until they eventually later on in life came to Jesus. And all these guys, they're like, you know, I'm going to go whoop this guy. And, you know, I'm like, well, what about the girl?
She cheated.
Yeah. I mean, I would be like, no emotion. Okay, I don't want her anymore. She's not loyal. Move on. There's what, 3 or 4 billion out here? That ended. Once she left, you know, it's like, but
Why
they
do you
get-
gotta whip somebody?
Let's go have a fight. It's over. You know, because I was having a conversation this week with a young guy, and people, you know, they know we follow Jesus and things happen, you know, with this guy. His girlfriend broke up, and he's just devastated. And so I'm trying to, you know, I want to share about Jesus, but I'm listening. I mean, okay.
You're trying to console him.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, he's really upset. And so the more I'm hearing, the more I'm listening, I'm trying to form an opinion. I'm not a counselor, but he asked my opinion, I guess, you know, for whatever reason. So I gave it because I'm like, so I said, no, why did she break up with you? But it was all generic. And so I was like, I kept trying to get the specifics. And so I finally realized, no, there was no specific. She doesn't love you.
That's right.
It's been a few days. Has she reached back out to you since the breakup? Because he's blind. You know, he's like, what am I going to do? I was like,
Is there a possibility it could
It
be
could be
her?
you.
yeah. Well, I'm like, she doesn't love you. It's over. It's time to move on.
Move on.
I mean,
.org.
but it was like, he was shocked. Like, well, I don't want to hear that.
That's why you're not a paid counselor, Jace.
Called it like I saw it.
he has one patient. Let's take a break. So, Dad, this Tex Cyrus wrote a book called "Your Mama Wasn't a Monkey."
I read that.
and sent it to you.
Excellent book.
Yeah, and it's really good because it just kind of from what I read of it, it's kind of seemed like to me more just a common sense approach about evolution versus God.
I think he's a medical doctor.
Okay, yeah, it's,
Medical doctor.
and it basically it's his memoir. It's about his life as well, right? So
Yeah.
he tells you about that. So anyway, Dad loves it, recommends it, says you should get it, and it sounds like something he would say. Your mama wasn't a monkey.
Yeah.
I mean that kind of sounded like that was a Phil quote. So I thought that
It's
was
definitely, the title is is one that just makes you stop and say, do what?
that's right. You don't say that and then you just like ignore that. You're like, what? What did he say? Your mama wasn't a monkey. So we want you guys to check it out. You go to Amazon.com. You can purchase the book Your Mama Wasn't a Monkey by Tex Cyrus. So it's a good read. Yeah, that's why Jace didn't work out in the counseling business.
Well, it's not. Look, I realize because when I read this,
It was the truth,
I mean,
though. That's the
there's nothing more upsetting to me in a marriage than adultery. I'm just as upset now. I get angry if someone's in the church and they're, you know, I feel betrayed, you know, just like they are. I mean, I'm hot. So it's not that we're not saying that's not horrible. And what it does to kids.
I read this
and-
story and I'm thanking God when I read it. I'm like, whoo,
Exactly.
God, if you cut her some slack, he could cut me some. I
that's-
needed
Well,
it.
that's right.
So,
I mean, grace doesn't nullify the consequences and sting of sin that happens to it. It's horrible.
That's
you know?
right.
Well, so let's read the story. It's short, and then we'll finish up and kind of jump in there. But verse 1 said, "But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives." This is from the previous story. At dawn, so he's in Jerusalem. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. So this is at dawn. This is a very early morning Bible
I
class.
like that little just byproduct.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is early morning Bible class. Verse 3, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery, which you imagine the spectacle of what that looked like, either naked or probably just covered in something.
Yeah, because some verses say caught in the act.
Right.
But,
They made her.
or it's the next verse.
Yeah,
I
next
think.
verse. They made her stand before the group. Now she's either naked or partially clothed, and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him, which
So
one
if we stop right there, they don't care about this woman.
at all.
And they found whatever was going on in the old law. I mean, I'm sure you looked it up, but on the stoning,
Oh yeah,
yeah, because he set up a
Both had to
code
be
of
stoned.
ethics, which tells you what he thinks about that at one point in time in our history.
Right.
I mean, which is I think why God gets a bad rap.
right.
Is it better? Would life be better if there was no adultery?
Very much so.
So he was right. You know, now
Right all
he
along.
came up with some rough consequences if you get caught as a society. But the theme was the society would be better off if everyone stayed together. Because if you don't come up with something that was that would keep you from doing it, I mean, that probably would. They'll kill you with rocks, the city.
Right.
That'll probably deter it, you know?
I would think.
Yeah.
And yet, people still obviously they didn't. I mean, even knowing that under threat. So
They still didn't do it.
they still
And you
didn't.
say, does that make God bad? No, because he was leading you to John 8 in a moment in history where he wants to forgive you.
So Jesus bends down. So they asked him this question. So it's kind of hanging there in the air. And Jesus just bends down and starts to write on the ground with his finger. And remember, they're in temple court, so it's probably dust on the thing. He's writing something, which there's been so many questions about. What was he writing? What was he writing?
Yeah, I love Jim McGuigan.
That's
one of my
that's
mentors.
amazing. After he had just been asked the question,
Yeah.
the question was, a woman was caught in
What
the
do you
act of
say?
adultery. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone such. What do you say?
What do you say?
And he's over here writing on the ground,
He's writing on
What
the
did
ground.
McGuigan say he wrote?
He said
which tells you he's not in a bind yet.
he said he drew circles, which it was a great illustration. He's like, we don't know what he wrote, but he said, I know what he did. And what he did was draw a circle around everyone and say, you're all sinners, which was a pretty good point.
Oh,
Then he was like, and then he got in the circle and said,
Yeah.
neither do I condemn you.
Right.
But he wasn't saying I know what he wrote, but the way he acted, he drew a big circle, and you're in it. You know how he's from Ireland. He drew
I
a
love it.
huge circle, and guess what? You're in it. He's kind of a
He's
holler.
fiery. Yeah, I like
but
that
it
movie.
was kind of a moving thought.
But you're right, Dad. The Jesus' reaction was priceless. It's like, what are you going to do about this? And he's like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like no big deal.
That's right.
Drawing a circle.
So verse 7, when they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them,
They were like, while he's just sitting there writing.
They
on
thought
the
they
ground,
had it.
They're like, they're like ravaging
oh
wolves.
yeah, they thought they were like the people you described that are 6 inches from the
He
courthouse.
hasn't said a word.
He hadn't said anything. Then he said, if any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. That's my take. That was his answer back.
Boy, there's a hush fell over him. Can you imagine? They're like, ooh.
So then they're
So
thinking,
now we know how to stop riots.
that's right.
If anyone is not
That's
guilty
right.
of anything,
ever, then
you can throw. Rocks.
and pull the
That
statues
would have
down.
been a good question to ask all the ones that's been in the streets of America, going way back 200 years, removing statues of men of renown 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
who also
They're
had
also-
sins, who were
Yeah,
also sinners.
also sinners, and they're like, yeah, but look what they did, and like they haven't sinned. Look at what they're doing.
Oh, but that's the thing. It's never empathy. That Jay said it a minute ago. They didn't care about this woman.
I wish we had Jesus to walk in among
Look,
them.
that
man.
needs to be our compromise. We say, okay, you can tear down all statues if you replace them with images of Jesus. I'd be for that.
I wouldn't
Me
mind that
too.
either.
Yeah.
All right.
We have one statue
Yeah.
globally.
We'll take one last break. All right, so verse 8, so how does Jesus, so what happens? So then again, he stooped down and starts writing on the ground again. So he made his little statement, and he's writing on the ground. Verse 9, at this, those who heard began to go away, one at a time, the older ones first, and then the younger, until Jesus was only left, with the woman still standing there. So now she's standing there when whatever way they brought her in, like we'll show you. And
She's thinking about, whoa here. She's feeling a little better about this.
right. Well, you wonder. I always
sure
imagine
she went
that,
from fear to just, I mean, what would you call this now?
Well, I-
overwhelmed because
oh.
you think you're going to die.
That's right.
I mean, she thought she fixed to die.
She thought
Oh,
she
yeah.
was going to die.
She's
There's
probably
no doubt about it.
shaking violently.
Plus, I imagine her just looking down, like not even able to make eye contact with anybody. I mean, she's caught, and the way they put it out here, she's fixing to die. She was as surprised
right.
as anybody at Jesus' response.
I
I'm
think
sure.
though, she's probably in shock. Just think, right before you're fixing to die. I think that probably superseded everything else, and now she's going to live.
And this would seem to me to be a horrible way to go.
Oh man.
Man,
Steve,
rocks.
Stephen died that way. I mean, remember? In Acts 7 and 8.
Everybody's
What's-
throwing rocks. They're I would say large rocks.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
every
it's
time
ba-
one of them hits you, you break that bone, this bone, that, until
It's
you
just
just
horrible. But I think when you look at it from an Old Testament history, because I'm sure people say, well, why would God sanction that under the law? But you got to remember, to him, death is not a problem. And so we view it as the ultimate problem, but he is life. It's not a problem. And when you look at the character that he's after, he's also 100% righteous. You're having to go down a slippery slope for us to even understand how you could pull all this off. Because he basically, he's not endorsing adultery, obviously, because he laid out what a true marriage is, and that what God joins together, let man not separate. But he's also offering his nature of forgiveness, and in essence, life again, because he saved her from death in this.
And
instance.
remember the context that Jesus is dealing with. They weren't here to deal with an adulterous situation. They were here to try to trap him. So that was the motivation.
She went from death to life in minutes.
Exactly.
Actually seconds.
Seconds.
and he risked his life because
Yeah.
which he had some atoms and molecules,
And the mob was
you know.
gone. I'm seeing them now. They're hitting them with fire extinguishers, and there's a lot of rock throwing.
Oh, yeah.
You notice we are still casting stones.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
To
At
this day.
anybody in authority, you're like, it was that kind of mindset that get gathered up that day.
thousands of-
Same thing you see it on the streets of
thousands
America.
of police officers have been
They got
hurt.
they got a grievance, they got a beef,
Right.
and then they start throwing rocks at people, and you're like,
Same thing.
It's very similar.
They had it justified here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they, in their mind, you have to justify the action first.
That's right.
And then you pick up the rocks, and then you say, and then I said,
and
well,
they've
let's
never
just,
looked at themselves, and they say, I wonder if burning down my neighbor's business, I wonder if that's something wrong with that. I mean, I wonder if that's a good thing. Think about it.
Well, look, through the
Yen
years,
thinks it's good.
through the year, we know a lot of police officers. We're friends with a lot of them. But, through the years, I've encountered police officers who weren't very nice.
Oh,
Weren't very
yeah.
nice to me and other people. But, I never thought, what, this jerk, I'm fixing to go find a rock and start throwing it at him.
Well, right.
The thought never, even if the guy was a jerk, I mean, I never did.
Well, but Al, the point is, when you see a video of obviously a police officer doing something
Sure.
that it's as heinous as anything a criminal would do, your emotions get involved.
Oh, they got to me. I hated it. 'Cause I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
me too. And that's what causes this. And then they're like, "Well, we got to do something about it." And all cops are bad. Well, wait a minute now. You had me until we got to have some cops. And that, which
But when
is-
they quickly moved in, arrested him, and charged him with murder, which he should have been, I thought, well, that's our system. That's what we do to take care of
Yeah.
stuff like that. We don't go out and
Because-
start throwing rocks at other cops.
well, in essence, because we're all flawed, so you're always going to have a problem with corruption in law enforcement
Sure.
because all people are corrupt. At
They're
some
going to make
point.
mistakes.
No doubt about it. Does that mean you throw the whole thing out?
This
and
is
just,
a good lesson for everyone to see. What about forgiveness
How do you
here?
respond? That's right. So verse 10, Jesus straightens back up again. You know, he's been down writing some more stuff, some more circles, I guess, Jay. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" I love it because he comes right back to her. By the way, he was the only one concerned about her in
He
this whole story.
cleaned the house with a couple of questions.
That's right. Actually,
The
with
first
one,
question,
one
the one without sin, you go for it.
That's right.
That cleaned him out with just one question.
So she says, "No one, sir." And then he says, as Jay said, "Neither do I condemn you." Then he says, "Go and leave your life of sin."
But the key part there is forgiveness that produces lifestyle change, which
repentance.
is what
That's
I
right.
said. It's a grace motivated
That's right.
system, which was this whole point. It was not based on the law. The Pharisees brought the law and rocks
Right.
and had justification of it.
I'm going to
So-
save you, which is when we come to Jesus, I'm going to save you. And because of my mercy and grace, I'm going to forgive you. But don't do that anymore.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And if you do, I'll be there. I'll still be there interceding. Even then, on top of that,
Right.
forgive you. And he said, by the way, you'll make some mistakes as you follow me. Just remember, I'm here.
Right.
Give them to me. Don't tell me you're not going to make some mistakes.
That's right.
You'll be a liar if you do.
Right.
I'm telling you, I have to be here to intercede for you, and you appeal to me, and I'll take your sins. I won't count your sins against you. He has bent over backwards to save us.
You're
No
right.
doubt about it.
One of my favorite lines from Celebrate Recovery, and I think Mac Owen, our friend, is the first one that I heard say it. Because, you got a lot of people in CR that have come out of a lot of rough lifestyle, and they say, Jesus will meet you wherever you are. And then there's kind of a pause that says, but he'll love you so much that he won't leave you there.
Yep.
And I love that idea. It's like we can find him in any place, but then we don't stay where we are. We let him take us to someplace different. If it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is that has you bound, Jesus wants you out of that, you
Yep.
know, because obviously it's destroying lives, it's wrecking people. So, I mean, in no better place do you see that in this story. Leave this life of sin. You don't want to stay there, which I thought was really powerful. Any last thoughts? We're about out of time.
No, the last thing I was going to say is, I said if we just had one statue about Jesus, unfortunately, in the religious world, they wouldn't agree on what it should look like. Which is my point. I think you got to remember here, God does not, support sinful behavior whatsoever. But if he didn't go to a cross and die for us, we'd all be lost. I mean, his love and compassion is that motivation. So I think as religious leaders, we got to make sure we ain't walking around with a bunch of rocks in our pocket and, what are burning bridges instead of pointing people to the ultimate bridge, which is Jesus.
Well, there's a lot of anti, white stuff going on right now. But just a reminder, Jesus was a person of color. He was a Middle Eastern man.
He wasn't a European
He
white
wasn't
boy.
a European white guy. So I know some depictions make him look that way.
Yep.
But go over to the Israel and look at a young guy there about 30 years old that's full-blooded
I know
Israeli.
for sure that nothing in his appearance so that we would desire him. There was
he didn't stand out.
He was not a looker.
He wasn't a looker.
Yeah,
Nope.
but one of the things about coming to Jesus is that
That's Isaiah 53, by the way.
Right.
he makes you colorblind, and
That's
it
right.
doesn't happen. It happens organically.
Right.
When you realize where we all came from and what we all have in common, one of them is sin, and one of them is forgiveness in Jesus. you're colorblind.
And then none of the three of us are going to back down from that, because I hear people say, I've heard a lot of people in the religious and evangelical world say, "Oh, we we're not colorblind, we're colorful," and all these different sayings are saying. I said, "No, I'm colorblind.
Oh, I'm colorblind.
It does,
I've been that way
that
for
does
years.
not matter to me, and we're one race, and you said that we're the human race. So I think that's where we got to camp out. So good stuff." So we're so glad you guys were with us today. You can subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube or Facebook, and be sure and rate us on iTunes so that other people can know about the podcast.